All right. It's good to have everybody here. And we have two presenters today. Lilia Caballero is going to do a little continuation of gardening in small spaces that we did from last week. And we had so much from last week that we were able to roll over into this week a little bit. But then we're going to turn it over to Ed and Barb Holm about succulents. And they have beautiful succulents at their house, and we're looking forward to seeing what they have for us. So I'm going to go ahead and give you access to screen share. I'm sorry? Somebody say something? Okay. So I believe that you both have access to screen share now. And
I think she's going to go first.
so Lilia, tell us how you do small space gardening at your house.
Okay. Well, there was, I have a video that I want to share. And, we bought this home 2 years ago, and it has lots of areas that we're trying to convert into something that we can use for gardening. And we had the house came with an old hot tub that hadn't been working for a while. So, we broke that up and got rid of it. And we were going to take the metal structure that was around that. We were going to take that down, but then we decided we're just going to use this space for gardening. So we bought some wine barrels that, we finally got in place, and we're still working on them, but we've got a couple of them up, and that's what I'm going to share right now. And it's just, this is all kind of new to us. We had not had a home in a while. And so gardening was one of the things that I missed a lot from when we had our home 9 years ago. And so, but we're doing it differently this time. This time we're actually planting things that we can eat. So it's not just flowers and stuff, but it's, let me share that video with you now. And it's kind of short, but let's see if I can figure this out again. Last week, we talked about gardening in small spaces. And I want to share with you this. Are you able to see it? Right here.
Just see you.
We hear you, but we don't see the video.
We had a hot tub, and it was not working, so we did not need it. So we decided we were going to take this frame down, but we said let's keep it. Let me see, guys, see if I can. I had shown you guys. Are you able to see it now?
No,
we had bought these wine barrels here. Let me see if I can figure this out, guys. I'm sorry, my editor was not working, and so we have one. How about there? In this area here, and as you can see,
we see your screen. Yes, but we see the car.
You don't necessarily, if you don't have yard and you have concrete, this is a great idea. And you saw last week how Lorna had.
It's always an adventure.
Yeah, I had shown you guys one of the videos that we had bought. I'm having trouble with it, Kara.
You want to come back to that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see, maybe Barbara can start and I can.
Now, you're going to see if we have any better luck. No.
So we're going to turn it over to Ed and Barb Holm, and they're going to share about succulents and some other cool stuff that they have in their garden, and they have a beautiful yard. Take it away.
Okay.
First of all, I'm just here to take care of technology.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, that's what the most overwhelming part would be the technology of it all. But thanks for inviting us to do a little sharing. Whenever I'm talking about plants, and especially on Sabbath afternoon like we are right now, it reminds me of my childhood, because my dad was really good at taking us out in nature in various ways every Sabbath afternoon. So he'd be identify with this perfectly. Instead of us going together, we will share our experiences from our own personal yard. So I would much rather have you all over and be able to do a little hands-on. But since we can't, we'll tell you about it. Maybe we can do a hands-on later. In the meantime, we are going to try to do a sharing screen and show you some PowerPoint information, and I'll be talking us through that. If you have a question, I'm not quite sure how that all works. If you can just say, I have a question, or I'll say periodically, does anybody want to add, so that we can have a conversation together.
They can also make, there's a chat box. They can put a question in there too.
Okay.
But they can
Sounds-
unmute and ask a question.
Okay. So we're going to try to share a screen. Can you see something up here? Tips for growing and propagating succulents.
Yes.
Yeah, great job.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you to Ed, you know, because I've never done a PowerPoint. So I guess,
Everyone needs a tech person.
yeah, well, he definitely is mine. Okay, so let's get started with, this is a picture actually from in our backyard, for those of you who haven't been here. How did I get started with succulents? I kind of tried to remember. I think it happened years ago. We've been in this home for probably, I think, 13, 14 years. And we had these planters hanging against the fence near our hot tub. And it just seems like they were always forgetting to water them because they needed to be watered quite a bit, being in the full sun. And I just thought, oh, goodness, what can we plant in here instead? And I tried using some succulents. And even though they really aren't that wild about being in full sun all the time themselves, nonetheless, we started with some succulents and it just grown. You can see this is just one container with a variety of succulents in them. And this is along another, these pottery half circle containers are ones my dad made years ago. And they were on that, they were the ones that were originally on a different fence where the succulents got started. So subsequently, we've moved them over onto this dividing fence between our grass and the equipment for the pool. I'm going to point one out to you. You can see the three starting from the left to the right. Well, the one here on the right, you can see a piece sticking way out and kind of curving up. Make a note of that. That is something called a pup, or I forget the exact name, like a budding accessory that's coming off the original plant. And so when we're making note of that later, you'll know that's an example of one. So there's a host parent or mother plant that's buried in that succulent, and those are ones that are growing off of it, and it needs to be cut off. So I've been just waiting for somebody to ask me for it.
Maybe Joe wants it.
Yeah, because it can be cut off and started into a new succulent. So it's its own plant coming off of the mother plant. Okay. This is just 3 containers of succulents. You can see when I got into the succulents, this whole piece of the yard is succulents.
Mr. Caballero.
And yeah, it's a little promoting, or just a thank you again for Jose, who might be listening. He's the one that did some reproductions and made me additional wrought iron hangers. I had 2 that my parents had, and I wanted 3 more, and he did a perfect job on making 3 more of them. And then we added the pottery pots. But you can see these succulent are loaded, and this one on the far left with the kind of hanging down, I can't point to it really right there, is just got done blooming. It's beautiful pink, a mass of flowers. Can you point to it? I don't know if I can point. Can you see me pointing to something?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway, it's a beautiful succulent. I think it's sort of.
We can see your pointer.
Oh, okay. It's this one.
Yeah.
And so I have started a piece of that over here as well. And I think there might be maybe a piece in this one over here. So it's easy to make another one of it. I think it might be related to some sort of ice plant. This is just a closer up of one of those hanging pots. And this is that same flowering one that's finished flowering that's down here. You can see succulents actually have quite a variety of different kinds. You can see just by looking at the kind of a rosette they call hens and chickens sometimes. I don't know if this one might fit into that category. But the ones with distinct leaves like this are easiest when you're trying to propagate, you know, and make additional ones to have separate leaves. Again, this is just another one. Okay, it gives you an idea. So I'm going to share just some succulent tips, and then we'll move into propagating specifically. But there's a nice handout from, we have a nursery here in town called The Greenery. And so this has got a number of pieces from them. So you can always make reference back to it if you want to. Kind of a couple points, just an overview. I'm kind of wondering how many of you have succulents that you're growing at home? Okay, I can see Kara said yes.
I have one.
Okay, and who said I have one?
Lorna.
Lorna, okay, Lorna. Okay, so we have some succulents out there. Now, I know you've been focusing on eating. Succulents generally these are not edible except for, you know, aloe vera, which is an aloe plant, which would be, you know, medicinal, could be used and can be, I think, eaten too, can't it? Can it have some sort of, I think, I don't know that much about aloe, but it is in that family, okay? So basically what they're pointing out here on this handout is that most of us, I always was thinking they just like to be as much sun as possible, but actually they do prefer to be in some shade because it's so hot in the afternoon sun. So if you do have a succulent and you notice they're getting, and this is showing you a sign to watch for, bleached or brown spots on the leaves, they're getting too much sun. So you really can't do anything about those leaves, but you could move your plant into more shade. And then it says when succulents do, but if they don't get enough sun, you'll get these long stems and leaves spaced out rather narrow, broadly, because they're looking for the sun. So they become leggy. So this is more common when succulents are used indoors. So it's important to make sure you have indirect light if you use them indoor. Now, I don't have any of my succulents indoors at the moment. I actually don't have any living plants in my house indoors. I've just chosen to leave them outside because we have so much outside space. Watering, I don't know if you're like me, but if I see a plant that I'm thinking it needs water, and generally, most people overwater their succulents. They're kind of a fleshy plant. They hold quite a bit of water in their leaves. So their suggestions are during the heat of the summer, you'd be watering them once a week. And I know I've been watering mine more than once a week. So this has been a good review for me to start taking better care of my succulents. I'm sure if they could talk, are going to be real thankful that I did this, because I will hopefully take better care of them. Once every 2 weeks in the fall or spring, and once a month in the winter. Okay, so it means that if you're out in pouring rain for days, you really would be best to move your succulents out of the rain. Depends on the size of the pot. It says here, the smaller the pot, the more water it will need. For example, in their nursery, when they have 4-inch pots, they're actually watering them about 3 times a week because there isn't as much volume of soil, which makes sense. So the main rule probably for any of them is to let them dry out a bit between watering. So if you feel the top of the soil of where your succulents are planted and it's still damp, then you probably shouldn't water. Okay, soil and drainage. You know, you could probably grow succulents in most anything, but if you want to have the best results, you really need a good, well-draining soil. And they're talking about a specific brand, but a cactus succulent soil, you can buy bags of it, probably at most any of these gardening places. If you really want to be, you know, homesteading your succulents, you want to go and mix your own. You can find recipes for succulent, um, soil on Pinterest, but mainly you need to have sand and pumice and other things in your soil that don't retain water, because you don't want it to be sitting in water and damp all the time. So that's the key. That's the difference on this cactus soil or the succulent soil. So if you plan to plant succulents in a pot without drainage, you need to use like an inch of horticulture of coal or rocks or something so that you have some little drain at the bottom of your soil. So the problem is when they keep moist too long and they tend to just start rotting. It says they turn black and you just need to start over and throw them out. So try to avoid that. Cold hardiness, we're here in the Central Valley and we're in a perfect setting for succulents. They really like this kind of weather that we have. But we do get frost occasionally, as you all know, that are watching for your plants. So there is some frost tender, issues. So you really want to watch for your picking out succulents that have a 25-degree hardiness or lower to be safe. So if you do pick succulents that aren't frost hardy, then you probably want to cover them at night during that time period. Now I'm going to show you some pictures of some. Now this is a list that they've listed. These are frost hardy succulents for our area, just to give you a few. But you can see that from the names of them, there's a lot of them that are echeveria. See all of these down here? That's a certain group of them. And you move on down here, a lot of sedums all the way down here. So there's quite a few in those two categories. If you were to go and actually buy one at a nursery, they could probably tell you, or you can come and get a piece from me. No, you're welcome to get a piece. So I'm going to just show you some pictures. I don't know if you can see or if everybody's pictures on top of these, but basically, I looked up to see what zone we are in, and we're actually titled as Zone 9B is our zone in the U.S. So if it's all over U.S.
But if they're having trouble seeing anything with the pictures, you can move around your little boxes. You can move them across the screen.
I can.
You just tap on the top section of the box and drag it. So
somebody.
Tap and hold the box at the top and drag it, move it across if it's covering something.
Okay, everybody, you just got moved. Got it? Are you okay? No.
Also, Kim says aloe, you can get aloe drinks, so you can definitely drink it. And she says she wants to come and snip some, Barb.
Okay, well, I've got some. We'll just make
this is true. I didn't say it, but yes, I do.
Okay, sounds good. So anyway, I'm just showing you some in Zone 9B that we are, just some categories that I just think they're kind of pretty. I mean, I'm getting a much better appreciation than just the plant that I'm going to plant and ignore out there. But I'm really like, oh, those really are cute. And that's pretty. I like the look of it. So these are some categories. And I like, because a lot of them have different names. And I'm thinking I'd much rather look at their nicknames, might I call, rather than their species and their, what do you call it? The scientific names. Sunburst, Mardi Gras, Lily Pod, makes you almost want them because of their names. Sun Cup, Green Platters, Dinner Plate. Anyway, and then cactus fit into the category, into this category as well. Here's another whole group called Crassula. And you can take a look. You might have recognized some of these, some of the shapes and of some of them, like Pagoda Village. That's kind of fun.
Tiger jaw.
Oh, is that in here? Oh, Tiger Jaw. I actually I'll introduce you to one of my new succulents. It is a Tiger Jaw, but you'll have to wait on that. And then this one is the unusual ones. And these are just some very distinct shapes and colors. Just a side note, it's not in the screen, but sometimes you wonder about the colors. Colors of succulents sometimes can be, you can bring them out or they change seasonally. And other times when they're stressed, either due to light, lack or more water or less water, and sun will affect the color. So if you're trying to get a different color within that particular succulent, those are variables that might make a difference. Okay, I guess we'll just leave you over there right now. Okay, fertilizing, I'm being perfectly honest. I am learning from all of this because I'm not highly experienced. I don't know how I got talked into this, but I think it was good for me. My succulents definitely will be thanking me. It's suggesting to actually be fertilizing them, which I have very rarely have fertilized my succulents, but you can see they're really quite growing very well without it. So I can imagine what it's going to be like when I start fertilizing my succulents, like they really would like me to. So it's basically suggesting, you can see 16, 16, 16, that's showing a balance in a general fertilizer, but for some reason, they really like this particular one, and it's called Max C, but it does have that proportion. And they're, usually it's a powder mixed into water into a gallon, and you just pour it on when you water. You should pour your fertilizers on moist soil. So I think that would be with most any fertilizer you would be adding onto your succulents. It could be once a week, and since that's all you're supposed to be watering, remember, and that you could be doing it with your watering and probably would make a difference. Fertilizing generally shouldn't be done unless you've got an established plant. So if you're just propagating something, I probably wouldn't fertilize right away. I think it's too much stress on them. General look on pests. The two most common pests are mealybug and spider mites. I don't know if any of you've had any that have succulents or other plants. You probably recognize having had mealybug or possibly spider mites. I see you nodding, Kara. Yes, mealybug does look like little white insects, and you can sometimes see them as succulent. They look like little puffy pieces, like soft cotton, they're suggesting, and maybe in the center rosette of the plant. And you can control it by picking them off, spraying with a hose, or treating it with some spray. Spider mites leave a little web on the leaves, and or can be on the flower. And I really haven't had a problem. Hello. Whoops, I'm moving.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Photobomb here.
We wanted to say hello anyway. Okay, I'm going to move into propagating. Okay, how many of you have done some propagating of succulents? Kara, yes. Lilia, a little. Okay.
Lorna a little.
Lorna, a little. Okay, good. So you can add in if you, have some suggestions. But I'm going to basically kind of cover 4 basic ways of propagating. Okay.
Ernest is joining us, and he put in the chat that he does propagating also.
Yes. In fact, we have done some sharing with succulents with Ernie and his wife.
Cool.
So that's great. Okay. Number 1 would be propagating from leaves. Second would be propagating from stem cuttings. Third would be propagating from pups or offsets or offshoots, like the one I pointed out at the very beginning. That would fit in number 3, the offsets or offshoots. And fourth would be propagating from seeds. Okay, so let's look at some step-by-step. So glad, Carrie, you told me how to move these things so we can actually,
Moving the slides and stuff.
whoops, uh-oh. I'm doing something wrong here. I need to move.
There you go.
I'm just trying to move everybody's picture. Uh-oh. Off the middle of this. How do I move this? Okay.
You could also hit the little minus button, and it might make all the pictures go down off your screen. Above your pictures, there's there's a grid, and there's.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah.
We see you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to look at propagating from leaves. How many of you use leaves to propagate from?
Mhm.
Okay, okay. So those of you who've done propagating have tried using leaves. Okay, so it's usually a good idea to start if you have a plant you're actually taking a leaf off of, is to start near the bottom leaves stem. Don't pick at the tip of your plant because you're basically destroying that particular shoot. So just don't mess with it. Pick one that's down lower near the base of your plant. Then it does helpful if you have a choice to choose healthy leaves, rather than ones that are spotted and marked and chipped and not looking well. If you really, I'm telling you the ideal, most of us know that have done this, that if you picked one and you threw it off on the ground somewhere, it may just decide to show up and survive.
Mhm.
But if you really want to have a better percentage of things turning out, you might want to kind of upgrade it a little bit. So when you're taking your leaves off the stem, it's best to try to twist them off a little bit rather than just rip them off, or you want to end up with as much of the stem that was close to the the leaf close to the stem as you can. So you can kind of twist them off. One thing I have noted in probably any of the techniques, that it really does make a difference to remove and let the leaves dry or callus or however you want to call it, but you want the end of your leaf or the end of the stems to dry. And sometimes that takes only a couple days, 3 days. They're saying 3 to 7 days. So you can just let them lay there all on their own. Don't worry about it. Just let them sit. They've got quite a bit of moisture within the leaf itself. And besides, it makes sense is that unless something has a root to it, it's really not going to be absorbing water. So, as much as I want to water all of these pieces, you probably just let it sit. And some of we'll get onto it later about some of the watering. So basically, it's really important, whether it's a stem, a pup, a leaf, or anything, that you let the wound dry, or callus is what they refer to it. Okay, so these are some leaves that I picked off and I just put in a box, and you can see they're kind of in the attempt of drying, and some of them have these little, you can see where they were connected on here. Okay, so they've been just drying. Now, I personally haven't used rooting hormones, but you can if you want. I remember years ago when I was doing some plant, nothing to do with succulents, I remember using some. It brings back memories. There are some things that if you want to try it, it doesn't hurt, and it might make it faster, is honey that's mixed in a little water, and you can use that as a rooting medium just to dip it in. Cinnamon, powdered cinnamon apparently might add to it. So does apple cider vinegar, could be used. And that's after the leaves are calloused. Remember, you don't do this until you've allowed the drying to occur first. Or you can just skip this step. Most people would say this is an option. So if now you're wanting to let them sprout new roots, some people will suggest you lay them flat. Others will actually, stick them into the soil and have them upright. So you probably could do either one. So they're suggesting laying them on a bed. And so that's what I thought. Okay, I will try to behave myself. I will try to do what they said to do. So I just laid them on soil, and some of them got some dirt on the top of them. But so they're outside on the patio, just laying here, and I have not planted them yet. I did allow them to dry for at least 3 to 7 days before I put them in here. So next is suggesting when you are doing propagating, don't put them out in the full sun. Even if your plant was, it's best to put them in kind of a covered area, or in kind of a somewhat shaded area, or at least indirect light. because you can burn them. Now they're suggesting to mist daily, and others will say absolutely don't get them near any water. So I'm just saying, if you're wanting to do an experiment and write a research paper, you can always split them up and do some misting and some not, and see what your results are. So I really don't, I'm just telling you that it can go either way. And I do have a little bottle from Dollar Tree that has water in it for various, whatever misting I do need to do with water, just plain water. So, okay. So once they do start to sprout with roots, but look how long they're saying, 4 weeks. Okay. So don't get restless and thinking that I'm just going to throw these things out because you haven't waited enough time. So frequently you're not going to see much roots until at least 3 or 4 weeks. And if you do actually decide to put the stem or the leaf actually in the soil before then, instead of just leaving it on the surface, and one way to tell whether they have roots is to just kind of tug them a little bit, and they'll resist themselves. You'll know, like, oh, there's some roots there. Now this is actually growing a new little succulent. Is that not cute? And then you can plant it in the soil if you really haven't done it already. Okay. Now these mother leaf things, actually at one point, after these have gotten a little bit of size, 1/2 inch or more, you can just separate them out carefully and basically give the roots all as much as possible to the baby, because the other leaf has probably been kind of shrinking, because the energy is being sapped out. The moisture and energy has been sapped out of the main leaf to the small one. Okay, so then success. Now realize, I've read some places that you're doing well to have even 50%, 50 to 70% of your leaves and stems take. So expect, to not have them all, root and develop new plants. Oh, this is the separating the mother leaf. And you just throw the mother leaf out. She's done her job. And so then I know, goodbye. So then you can actually transplant and put them into little pots, cute little 2-inch pots. Okay, so there you are. And then you can water them when the soil dries out. Now it may take you a year of this succulent growing before you have any significant size. So, it's not really fast, but it could be very satisfying knowing you were successful in doing so. Any questions on the leaf so far? Okay, I'm going to show you something that's totally different, but still we're focusing on leaves. Okay. Propagating leaves in water instead of soil. Have any of you tried this?
Nope.
Okay.
Yes. Lorna
Yeah.
has.
Lorna has. Oh, okay. Oh, good. So how has it gone for you, Lorna, in letting is it leaf or stems that you've done in water?
We can't hear.
Stems?
Uh-huh.
This
Yeah.
just seems contrary to everything you just taught us.
It is. Now let me explain to you. I know, it was just like, oh my goodness, I need to include this because Julie, it is out there. Now, let me tell you a couple pros and cons on this. You can see on the top of this container, there's a little plastic saran-ish sort of whatever thing over the top. And then they just make a little hole and stick the leaf or the stems through it. Some were just like, how it just has to be a certain way, is saying you put them in so that after they're calloused, remember, you always have that occur on all of your propagating. This is no exception. And this will protect it a little bit by not having slow down the absorption by having a callus before you would expose it to water. Now, some will say you shouldn't put it in water. You should put it just above water. Say, for instance, the water, you'd only have your water just right, below the leaves. This would be the level of your water. And then, whoops, and so that it would kind of reach down to the water. And others, they're putting it directly in the water. Now, part of the reason why they say that it'll work is that the reason why you don't want them to be too wet in the dirt is that there's a lot of microbes, fungus, other things like that in the soil where there isn't in the water. The water is just clean, fresh water. So you can get away with it. So this is you can always try it. Give yourself, experiment a little bit and see what happens. Some people feel it's faster to propagate in water. Others will also say, these are some purists on either camp, that once you do them in water, then you shouldn't try planting them in soil because the roots are used to the water and, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But then others who've done both have said, no, it's okay. So I would suggest it's time to do a little experimenting and check it out. Okay. So now we're going to move to propagating from stem cuttings. Again, allow the ends to dry. Now I have also, true confession, but I have gotten away with it, is have cut stems off, put them directly into a soil, didn't wait at all, just like as fast as I could cut it, I put it over into dirt, and probably have been okay in many instances, but you're really better off to do that callus formation. And you want to stress there's something about stressing your plant a little bit because it'll kind of force it into thinking of trying to grow new roots. And the callusing also protects it. So anyway, these are just some cuttings that I cut off. And so I'm letting them dry. And down here at the bottom, these are the ones that are like the pups or the offshoots I was making reference to earlier. They're like a plant in themselves. So this one even has some little roots growing on it. So that actually could be just planted directly. It wouldn't have to sit out here. So then after the callus formation, I went ahead and just put them in some of the cactus succulent soil. And then some will say to mist them, and others will say just let them sit for a while because they will actually, when they're stressed, they will grow roots faster. So I don't have enough experience to be dogmatic about it. I'm just telling you. Okay, this is going to throw you again, but we've already introduced the idea of water, and Lorna already told us that she's tried some cuttings in water. So here's a little summary of growing succulents in water. Okay. First, you choose your cutting, let the callus swell, and you prepare a water or a jar with water in it. A container. Put the stem in the jar. Now this one says let it sit just above the water, but not touching the surface. Okay. And place the jar in any area window, sill with filtered light. Wait for 3 or 4 weeks for the roots to grow. Add water when the water level reduces. But to me, it looks like in this particular illustration, it's pretty much above the water level most of the time. And yet others will put it totally in water. And I know my daughter has grown succulents and the roots were in water. So here's a picture of somebody's display. This is not mine. But this is showing, you can see in this far right lower hand, there's little plants growing under the water. Doesn't that look like under the water to you? I'm pretty sure it is. It's under the water. And so you can see all of these things. It's kind of fun. It's like moving from the pieces of sweet potato and avocado seeds to succulent leaves and succulent stems. Okay. Now this is just a little, that's at least giving us a little more food for thought on the whole propagating piece coming from the nursery. And this is what they're saying about it. Okay, now they're making reference more to propagating from pups or offsets or offshoots. They aren't referring to stems or leaves in this one. So we're on our third one. It says succulents are the easiest to propagate because they don't need constant moisture and attention. The growth habit of succulents is different than many plants in that babies or pups grow on the sides of the mother plant. And that's what we're referring to. They can easily be plucked off and replanted. To propagate, cut the new pups with as much stem as possible. Let the new cuttings lay in a lightly shaded area on a table and keep dry for 3 days, or for them to scab over. Now, these would be ones that don't have roots that develop. They're just, you cut them off and they don't have roots either. So they are suggesting to let the scab. Scabbing over part is crucial so the cuttings do not rot. Your cuttings will start to look shriveled, but this is part of the process. Wait a few weeks and tug on the cutting. If the cutting doesn't easily come out of the soil, oh yeah, you have roots. Now, once you have roots, you're able to water the cuttings. And when you will want to water in hopes of helping them grow, okay, everybody resists this, it is important to stress the cuttings. When you stress the cuttings, the roots will push out and try to look for water. Doesn't that visualize that? Makes sense. After you've watered, you'll see the cuttings start to get plump and the leaves will become thicker and fleshy again. So you don't want to you can water a little more once you do water the little babies and the cuttings and everything, but once they get full grown, I mean, they're on their own. You stop watering them so much because they're full grown succulents, and you can water them like once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on your season. Okay, now how about propagating with seeds? Anybody tried that? I think it's well said. How patient are you? Definitely not something I'm wanting to get into. Now, I may eat my words someday when I'm like, oh, I've got to try seeds. Well, I'll let you know if I do, and you let me know if you do. But basically, seeds would be, you can buy seeds, or you can try to pollinate your own flowers. These is a couple little flowers off the top of one of my cactus, my succulents out there. So if you wanted to what do you call it, fertilize or do whatever you do, pollinate. Yeah, you can use a little brush and you can try to, you know, brush the flowers, and then when they get dry, you can collect seeds and then you can try grow. Now, if you thought it was going to be slow with a leaf, you know, it's slower with seeds, I'm sure. So a couple more flowers, thinking, oh no, those would be cute to try to collect seeds from. If any of you want to collect some seeds, some flowers and collect seeds, go right ahead, just let me know. Okay, almost done here. This second, I'm gonna try to move this. I wanted to introduce you to 3 of my new friends. I have these 3 clay slab pots that my dad had made years ago, and you can't see that from the angle, but he had taken pieces of fern or something and pressed the leaf into the pottery before it was fired. But I hadn't put anything in them, and I thought, okay, we need to put little succulents in those. So I went and got 3 little succulents that I don't believe I have, and these are their names: Bluebird, Tiger Jaws, and Hedgehog. Aren't they cute? I thought so. It's sort of like, yes, I did get them for myself because I just thought the names were cute and they had cute shapes. So you might just, if you aren't already really into succulents, this might have just thrown you over the edge. So basically, thanks for joining me and Ed and I, as much as he hasn't included himself, because I wouldn't have possibly been able to put this together and without a lot of help. So thanks for joining me and us, might I say, and prompting me to take a new, fresh look and appreciation for my succulents. So if anybody has any questions or comments of things that are tips, because many of you are more experienced than I am, actually, please do. Any comments or questions?
Chats over here.
Thank you, Barb. I really enjoyed it. Kent and I enjoyed it, seeing all the pretties.
Yeah, well, good. Well, thanks for coming
I
on.
want some succulents.
You may
starting one on the wall. So,
Maybe for your anniversary.
oh, sounds good.
A month, the month one, it doesn't have to be a year.
Yeah, be 3 months here pretty quick.
Oh, okay, well, that'll count.
The 20th. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And any other comments or suggestions that people have had that might encourage the rest of us?
I don't have, I need to know, what do you do when they get too big?
Do you have that problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Which,
that succulents you're giving me is just overflowing the pots.
yeah,
Pass them on to us.
what you
No
do,
longer- They're no longer cute.
yeah, they're not cute anymore. Well, once they stop getting cute, then you need to repot them and pass them on. They actually can make nice gifts. So if you do think ahead of time, you could actually get some pots and get some nice pieces and actually work on that ahead of time, maybe to use for some gifts or give some away. They do say that you should repot yearly, your succulents, especially if you have a large number of them. And I really need to do that. But once that last picture I showed you, that was actually taking apart kind of a box of some succulents that had been giving me. And you end up with kind of a mess. I had sent it on to Kara with your daughter, some of the chunks that were in there. So yeah, I think Ernie, if they're too big and stuff, then I would just, you might just take some of the pups and all of that thing and root some of them, and you might pass it on or do whatever, and just bring it back to where they look good and you're happy with them. You obviously must be taking very good care of them or they wouldn't have grown so well.
Well, my kids have.
Yeah, they're like your kids. Do you fertilize them?
No, never.
Oh, see, think of the trouble you'd be in if you fertilized them. No.
That's what I was afraid of.
The thing is it might make them bigger, but I have a feeling they would just look better. I'm going to take a chance on fertilizing mine.
What I wanted to find out was if they get too big and you have a variety, how do you start to take it apart without causing damage?
Oh, you will cause damage. No.
Call a surgeon.
Yeah.
Ernie, call a surgeon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what you do is if you really try to untangle, or if you really have a lot, you basically are going to have to kind of take them apart and kind of refresh it, is my guess. Send me a picture of some of the ones you're talking about, and maybe we can have a chat about it.
Okay.
You have to get a new phone though, Ernie. You got to get a phone that can take a picture.
You're right. How about anybody else? How about you, Lilia? You said you had done a little bit.
Actually, Barbara, I'm not able to load up my video, but I didn't want to mess with it too much because I didn't want to miss out on what you were talking about because I was learning so much. But we do have a guest, Kim, who is wondering that if you just take, when you were talking about the seeds, if you were to just take the dry dead flower and just toss it in the dirt, would it grow? Wondering if that's a possibility because he might have to try it.
Yeah, I think you might Google, there's so much information out there on growing succulents by seed, and there probably somebody could give some tips. The little bit I read about it sounds like you need to dry it. You've got a very small percentage of what will actually grow. And the thing is, unless the flowers have pollinated, they won't reproduce. The seeds won't reproduce. And you'd hate to wait all the time it would take to have something not reproduce. But, I've never tried. So it would be a matter of experimenting.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other comment from Kim, which I agree, is that we should probably have a class on how to make those pots that your dad made. Those were cute.
I know.
Adorable, little square.
Yes. I should have I had a picture, but I didn't include it in here. And it would be fairly easy if you do a pottery class at all, it's just slab. It's not done on a wheel. You know, I took a pottery class once, but you'd have to have access to a kiln of some sort. But basically you would be doing slabs, and you do imprints just like you would be if you were pressing something into clay, or you were doing it the other way with like your pencil or your crayon over the top to get the impression on a leaf. But this way you're pressing it into the pottery. Yeah, they are quite cute.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, I
Oh,
didn't
how
even
big
notice-
are they? How big
what?
are they?
Maybe Ed can grab one, and you mind out on the patio, one of the small I would say they're not bigger than about 4 or 5 inch square.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
fairly small. Yeah,
That's what
fairly
makes
small.
them. That's what makes them cute.
Yeah, they are. They really are. And somebody, I'm just noticing, I didn't even notice these questions over here. Sorry, I don't know if I saw them earlier or not, but the pots on the fence, yes, they are pottery. They're actually made of pottery. And my dad actually did some balls that are little fountains as well. So he was quite good interested in the sculpturing piece of art, more so than he did some painting, but mainly the sculpturing, the actual 3D, that he did several things in that sense. And I see, Ernie, you said you have a hedgehog too. Oh, how sweet.
It's getting too big.
It's too big. Well, mine isn't too big. Mine's a little teeny weeny. So
It broke one of the pots.
oh, okay.
Oh,
Wow. You'll have to send us some pictures, Ernie. Come back on, get some pictures and share them with us. Yeah, no, mine's obviously little, but sounds like it could get big. So anyway, okay. Anything else other than that?
We have all of ours in the full sun. They're doing fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it must be a good combination. I'm sure it varies on the kind of succulent too. Some are probably a little vary a bit, but there were some pictures, but I didn't include them in here. The striking differences that can occur depending on the light and the amount of sun and the amount of water or lack of water of the colors that will be out onto your succulents. And if you're really wanting something with color, they said you can look at the name of the succulent, and if it has a color in the name, then you're more likely to have colors. Like my little bluebird, I'm thinking, oh, okay, so maybe I'm gonna have some more color on that one. Anyway, I don't want to take any more time, but I just, did you get your video to work?
no, I did not.
Okay, here is the
We'll try
picture.
again next week.
Here's a picture of this little slab pottery.
Yes,
Isn't that cute? And
that is very cute.
what it's nice is that you can see like each side has a different, it's kind of just rough and somewhat primitive style, but you can see the edges have been just pressed together basically. And then it's got the bottom, this one, 2 of them do not have a hole. So I have to be more aware of the watering, and 1 does of the 3. This is my hedgehog, Ernie.
Yeah. I know.
You
I
recognize it?
Yeah, I do. It's gonna get big.
Thanks for the warning. Okay.
Barb,
Yes.
Kim wants to know if you accept distance visitors, like from Modesto, to come on down to your place and.
Yeah, just have her message me.
Yeah.
That's not distance. Ernie, now you're beginning to be distant way up in Antioch, but hey,
Well, it told me it's only 1 hour and 20 minutes.
got it.
Okay.
That's not that far.
Well,
So
that was an awesome presentation, Barb. Thank you.
Yes.
Yay. Before we wrap it up, I got an email from Sherry Darrow, who is on here. And it was, she encouraged me by telling me that she's doing a garden for the first time in many years. But she sent a couple of tips, and I don't know if Sherry, if you want to chime in here, you're certainly welcome to pop on and talk with us. but I'm gonna, are you there?
I'm here.
So Sherry, what did you learn? And we're going back to vegetable gardening on this one. So,
Well, what I found, I used the same area that we had used for gardening before, but then I was paying attention and I noticed that it didn't appear like it was getting as much sun as the instructions said that the tomato plants and zucchini plants needed. So I started Googling it and trying to figure out what I could do until I can build a raised bed in a different area of my yard that gets more sun. And I found the idea of using mirrors as a reflector. And so it would reflect the sun. But then I also read the suggestion said, you know, those sunshades you put in your window of the car that fold up, that those would work. And I had one. So I went and Kara, I don't know if you can show the one of the wall, that one. So so I did this as an experiment. I just taped it to the wall to see if it worked, and it did. And I was thinking of buying more, but I remembered that in one of the suggestions, it said aluminum foil. So I put aluminum foil on the wall and I put it right next to it and found that the aluminum foil did a better job. So now that's the back wall of my house right now with aluminum foil. And it increased the plants from getting 4.5 hours a day of direct sunlight, because this reflects just as if it's in the sun right onto the plants, to 6.5 hours a day.
Wow.
So, and it was really inexpensive. It works really well. Although in this crazy wind that we're having right now, it rattles.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
But I just thought, so I shared it with Kara because I thought, you know, last week they were talking about their yard not having some areas not as enough sun. And I know we probably all have areas like that. And this was a perfect way for me to do it. I actually, the ones against the fence, ended up taking those away because I think it was giving it, it was too close to the plant. And I think it was getting too hot because my plants were showing some stress. So this week I took those that were against the fence away, and it's just on the wall.
now see, I never ever would have thought of that. So that's a cool tip.
No, that is
Appreciate that.
great idea.
That's one of the things that's making this little gardening friends of fun project that we're working on here. We're sharing what we are learning.
That's good.
So
I'm glad to hear that. I'm planning on doing my vegetable gardening again.
Oh, good.
Good.
We had so much produce, it was incredible. We were giving bags and bags and bags of vegetables away.
Wow. Wow.
This time we're going to be much more conservative.
Yeah, it gets to be almost a job if you're needing to organize all the giving away. Remember, you're only an hour and 20 minutes away, Ernie.
I know. I'm anxious to see and visit you folks once more.
Yeah.
Get a lot of tips.
Yeah, well, we can all learn from each other. Anyway, I just think just one final thing on the whole process is that I think we can learn too, coming from a spiritual standpoint, is that God is such a creator of variety. You know, we could just have one item that we're eating or one thing we're looking at, and yet the beauty and the variety are amazing. And we hardly have touched the tip of that option. So I think that's a good reminder for me to see that. And when we stop long enough, as they say, to smell the roses, to take a look at things, to experience it, to maybe grow something ourselves.
Amen. I was also thinking that, you know, succulents, they really feed off of one feeding every once in a while. And sometimes if you can only just put one Bible verse into your brain, you know, once in a while, it will help keep you going for a while.
That's right. That's right. Start with something.
I'm glad that you all joined us this week. Next week, I believe we were going to focus on herbs. So if you are growing herbs or have tips on herbs, we'd love to have you share something. Just contact either Lilia or I, and we will work that out. And thank you again, Barb and Ed, for the time that you put in this week to get that presentation put together, and for sharing your amazing arrangements in your garden. They're beautiful. So
You're welcome.
Well, Kara, if you wouldn't have had me do those health talks, I wouldn't have known how to do the PowerPoint.
well, by the way,
It's all your
people are
fault.
asking about, some people are asking about you starting those health talks maybe on Zoom. So maybe we should talk about that.
Good idea.
Amen. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ernie. You're gonna help me.
Yeah, Ernie, we know where we know your number, who to get a hold of to help with it. And by the way, Kim, I don't know if you've got my number, but
I don't know if she's still on.
if you're still on or want to contact Caro or Lilia, and we can, you can give us a call. And